You say, this guy is not doing things. Traore is doing them. Traore wakes up, dreams them up. Following morning, he makes a pronouncement. It is law. It is policy. Action follows. So you need to subvert some of these rules and processes unapologetically. And I will do it.
What you're about to witness is the most audacious challenge to global mining companies since decolonization. When President Duma Boko stepped onto that platform in Ramotswa village, he wasn't just making another political speech, he was writing the breakup letter of the century, delivered live to the world's most powerful mining corporations. But this isn't just about one country's defiance. It's about a revolution spreading like wildfire across Africa, inspired by a 37-year-old military leader thousands of miles away, who dared to show the continent what sovereignty actually looks like. The dominoes are falling, and the companies that have built empires on African minerals are about to discover that the rules of the game just changed forever. January 2025, Ramotswa village, Botswana. President Duma Boko stood before a crowd of farmers, miners, and civil servants in this dusty southeastern village. What he said next would send shockwaves through boardrooms from London to Mumbai, triggering emergency meetings in the world's biggest mining companies. Speaking in his native Setswana, his words were simple but devastating. No diamond will leave this country raw. All will be cut and polished here. No copper concentrate will be exported without local value addition. We are moving to a point where no mineral will leave this country without being processed. The crowd erupted. But thousands of miles away, executives at Beers and Anglo American weren't cheering. Botswana had just declared the end of colonial mining in Africa. In those few sentences, the world's second-largest diamond producer had effectively torn up decades of contracts and centuries of exploitation. But this wasn't a reckless decision. It was the culmination of a revolution that had been building across the continent. And it all started with a young captain in Burkina Faso who showed Africa what was possible. To understand Botswana's bombshell, you have to go back to 2022 and a dusty military compound in Burkina Faso, where a 34-year-old geology student turned soldier was planning something unprecedented. Captain Ibrahim Traore didn't just seize power, he seized an idea that Africa could control its own resources. Within months of taking power, Traore had nationalized Burkina Faso's gold mines, banned raw gold exports to Europe, and inaugurated the country's first gold refinery. His message was crystal clear. We know how to mine our gold, and I don't understand why we are going to let multinationals come and mine it. The impact was immediate. While Western companies had extracted billions from Burkina Faso's gold deposits, the country remained desperately poor. Under Traore's resource nationalism, projections showed GDP per capita could grow to $1,120 by 2043, lifting 2.4 million citizens from poverty. But the real revolution wasn't economic, it was psychological. Across Africa, leaders began asking themselves, if a landlocked country in the Sahel could break free from resource extraction, why couldn't they? What happened next was unprecedented in post-colonial Africa. Resource nationalism began spreading like wildfire across the continent. The alliance of Sahel states, Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger, became the epicenter, but the tremors were felt far beyond the Sahel. In Niger, the world's seventh-largest uranium producer revoked French company Orano's mining licenses, effectively holding Europe's nuclear energy program hostage. In Mali, gold mining contracts were renegotiated to favor local processing over raw exports. Then came the moment that changed everything. Botswana's President Duma Boko, a Harvard-educated lawyer who had just led the most dramatic political upset in African history, announced he was taking the same path. The inspiration was clear. As one African political analyst put it, this political moment is fueled by a feeling that Africa has been taken advantage of by foreign powers for too long. There is an upsurge in resource nationalism and a desire to regain sovereignty. The revolution had jumped from military government to Africa's most stable democracy. To understand the magnitude of Botswana's decision, you need to grasp what's at stake. Botswana isn't just any diamond producer, it's the crown jewel of the global diamond industry. The numbers are staggering. 25.1 million carats produced annually, second only to Russia's 37.3 million. 80% of Botswana's export revenue comes from diamonds. 90% of the country's entire GDP depends on diamond sales. Currently, only 10% of Botswana's diamonds are cut and polished locally. For over 50 years, this has been the perfect colonial arrangement. Botswana digs up the diamonds, ships them raw to India and Belgium for processing, then watches as others capture most of the value. The Botswana joint venture, 50% owned by Botswana, 50% by De Beers, has been the vehicle for this extraction. While marketed as a partnership, the reality is that Botswana has been a raw material supplier in a value chain controlled entirely by foreign companies. President Boko's announcement doesn't just threaten this arrangement, it obliterates it. And now you might be wondering, what are the names of these companies caught in this little tug of war? The companies in the crosshairs: Anglo American. The British mining giant that owns De Beers has already announced plans to sell the diamond business, partly due to declining profitability. Botswana's move could devastate the sale value. De Beers, the company that has controlled global diamond markets for over a century, suddenly faces the prospect of losing access to its most important source of rough stones. Indian diamond manufacturers Mumbai and Surat process 90% of the world's diamonds. Botswana's ban on raw exports threatens to destroy India's $24 billion diamond processing industry. But the implications go far beyond individual companies. Botswana's decision could trigger a complete restructuring of global supply chains. Currently, most of Botswana's rough diamonds are shipped to India for cutting and polishing because of lower labor costs. But if Botswana processes everything locally, it captures not just the mining value, but the manufacturing value too. The economics are stunning. A rough diamond worth $100 might be worth $300 after cutting and polishing. Botswana has just announced its intention to capture that $200 difference for itself. Boko's announcement comes at the worst possible time for the global diamond industry, which is exactly why it's happening now. The diamond market is in free fall. Diamond exports from Botswana fell 46% in 2024, from $3.63 billion to $1.95 billion. Global demand has collapsed, particularly in China and the United States. Lab-grown diamonds are capturing increasing market share at a fraction of the cost. Botswana's economy contracted 3.3% in 2024, forcing dramatic policy changes. But here's the twist. The crisis that's devastating Western diamond companies is creating the perfect opportunity for resource nationalism. When diamond revenues are falling anyway, the political cost of breaking with foreign partners drops dramatically. And when your economy is contracting, the promise of capturing more value locally becomes irresistible. President Boko inherited an economy in crisis. But instead of begging Western companies for better terms, he's rewriting the rules entirely. The leader behind this transformation is as remarkable as the policy itself. Duma Boko isn't your typical African strongman. The 55-year-old Harvard-educated lawyer spent decades fighting for human rights before entering politics. He gained national acclaim defending the San people's right to their ancestral lands against government appropriation for mining. In October 2024, he led the most stunning political upset in African history, ending 58 years of single-party rule in Botswana, the longest streak of democratic governance by one party in Africa. His victory wasn't just political, it was generational. Botswana's youth, frustrated by 28% unemployment despite living in one of Africa's richest countries, voted overwhelmingly for change. But Boko's vision extends far beyond domestic politics. His resource nationalism represents a fundamental challenge to the post-colonial order that has governed Africa for 6 decades. Speaking at that Ramotswa village meeting, he laid out a vision that would have been considered fantasy just years ago. We are going there. We will bring the laws required to make this happen. And when we do, nothing will stand in our way. Botswana's declaration is sending tremors across Africa, where resource-rich countries are watching closely. Chad has already banned US citizens from entering the country in retaliation for American visa restrictions, signaling a broader shift toward confronting Western pressure. Ghana is deepening ties with the AAE states, appointing a special ambassador and allowing the Sahel Confederation to use Ghanaian ports, effectively bypassing Western trade controls. Togo is reportedly considering joining the AES outright, having already signed customs and telecommunications agreements with the Confederation. The pattern is unmistakable. Country after country is discovering that defying Western expectations doesn't lead to collapse, it leads to empowerment. As one analyst observed, the colonial extraction model is dying, and some very powerful people are not happy about it. The response from Western powers and corporations has been swift and predictable. Diplomatic pressure is mounting. G7 countries are pressuring Botswana to reverse course through diplomatic channels, warning of potential trade disruptions. Economic threats are being deployed. International mining companies are threatening to withdraw investments and cancel expansion plans. Media campaigns are intensifying. Western outlets are portraying the move as economically reckless, ignoring the decades of wealth extraction that left Africa underdeveloped despite vast resources. But there's a problem with the Western response. It's the same playbook that failed spectacularly in the Sahel. When France tried to pressure the AES countries through sanctions and isolation, it only strengthened their resolve and pushed them toward alternative partners like Russia and China. Botswana has a crucial advantage the Sahel countries lacked. It's not a military government facing legitimacy questions. Boko was democratically elected with a massive mandate for change. While Western critics dismiss Botswana's move as economic suicide, the numbers tell a different story. Current reality: Botswana extracts diamonds and exports them raw. Foreign companies capture 70–80% of the value chain. Unemployment remains at 28% despite massive diamond wealth. Economic dependence on a single commodity leaves the country vulnerable. The new vision: all diamonds processed locally before export. Manufacturing sector employment could increase dramatically. Higher value-added exports reduce commodity price vulnerability. Domestic expertise in diamond cutting and polishing develops. The precedent exists. Botswana already hosts some diamond processing facilities, including a cutting and polishing center established through previous De Beers partnerships. The infrastructure can be expanded. More importantly, global dynamics favor the move. With lab-grown diamonds capturing market share, natural diamond producers need to maximize the value of their stones. Processing locally allows for better quality control and premium pricing. If Botswana succeeds, the implications extend far beyond Africa. India's diamond industry faces existential threat. Mumbai and Surat built massive processing industries based on accessing cheap rough diamonds. If major producers process locally, these centers become obsolete. Belgium's Antwerp diamond hub could be undermined. As a major rough diamond trading center, Antwerp depends on producers shipping uncut stones. Local processing eliminates that trade. Global mining companies must rethink strategies. The extractive model that worked for centuries, digging up raw materials in poor countries and processing them in rich ones, faces fundamental challenge. New alliances are forming. Countries pursuing resource nationalism are cooperating with each other and seeking alternative partners, reducing Western leverage.
What's happening in Botswana isn't happening in isolation. It's part of a continental awakening that's reshaping Africa's relationship with the global economy.
Student movements across Africa are promoting resource nationalism as the path to development. Diaspora organizations are organizing support campaigns. Other leaders are taking notes. The symbolism is powerful. If Botswana, stable, democratic, and wealthy, can challenge the colonial economic model, any African country can. As Ibrahim Traoré said when he started this revolution, this era is gone forever. The era of unchallenged resource extraction from Africa is indeed ending. The next 12 months will determine whether Botswana's diamond rebellion succeeds or fails. The government must pass legislation requiring local processing, a move that will face intense international pressure. Infrastructure must be built or expanded to handle increased processing capacity. International markets must be convinced to accept the new reality. The stakes couldn't be higher. Success would prove that African countries can break free from colonial economic structures and keep more of their resource wealth. Failure might discourage other countries from attempting similar transformations, but early signs are encouraging. Despite economic challenges, Botswana's economy is projected to grow 3 to 4% in 2025, partly because the diamond market is recovering. More importantly, President Boko has something his predecessors lacked: a democratic mandate for radical change and a population hungry for economic transformation. The broader implications of Botswana's move extend far beyond the diamond industry. For Western powers, this represents another crack in the post-colonial order that has governed resource extraction for 60 years. After losing influence in the Sahel, seeing democratic Botswana follow the same path is deeply concerning. For multinational corporations, the era of cheap resource extraction may be ending. Companies must adapt to working with sovereign partners who demand fair value, not subordinate suppliers who accept whatever terms are offered. For other developing countries, Botswana provides a democratic model for resource nationalism, proving that confronting Western economic dominance doesn't require military government or authoritarian rule. For global supply chains, the assumption that rich countries will always control high-value processing while poor countries provide raw materials is under fundamental challenge. Congo is watching as it considers how to capture more value from its cobalt and copper exports. Nigeria is watching as it evaluates its relationship with international oil companies. Chile is watching as it considers lithium processing policies. Indonesia is watching as it continues its successful nickel processing requirements. The lesson is spreading. Countries that control the raw materials can control the value chains if they have the political will to do so. Behind these geopolitical transformations are ordinary people demanding better lives. In Ramotswa village, where President Boko made his announcement, families have watched diamond trucks carry away their country's wealth for generations while they remained poor. Across Botswana, unemployed youth with university degrees question why their resource-rich country can't provide them opportunities. Throughout Africa, young people are asking why their continent remains poor despite vast natural wealth. The answer they're getting is simple: because we've been giving away our wealth instead of using it for development. President Boko's Diamond Rebellion represents their demand for change. It's democracy in action, with a population choosing sovereignty over submission. As we approach the implementation of Botswana's new policy, Africa stands at a crossroads. The path back to colonial extraction is closing. Western powers no longer have the leverage to impose their will through force or financial pressure. Young African leaders, inspired by figures like Traoré and Boko, are choosing sovereignty over subordination. The path forward leads toward resource nationalism, South-South cooperation, and African-controlled value chains. It's risky, difficult, and opposed by powerful interests, but it's the only path toward genuine development. The revolution that began in the dusty streets of Ouagadougou has reached the diamond mines of Botswana. Where it goes next depends on whether other African leaders have the courage to follow. President Duma Boko's words in that village square weren't just policy announcement, they were a breakup letter delivered to the entire Western mining establishment. For over a century, the arrangement was simple. Africa provided the raw materials, the West captured the value. That deal is officially over. The message to Beers, Anglo American, and every mining company extracting wealth from Africa is crystal clear. The era of taking our diamonds raw and leaving us with pennies is finished. If you want our resources, you'll pay fair value or find another supplier. But here's the beautiful part. There is no other supplier. Not with Botswana's quality, quantity, and reliability. The companies that built empires on African minerals now face a choice: accept African terms or lose access to African resources. For the first time in centuries, Africa is holding the pen and writing the contracts. The revolution is spreading. The old rules are dead, and every mining executive on the planet is about to learn what genuine partnership looks like.